Hi, my name is Schyler Church. I am a California real estate broker as well as a member of the education department at Accredited Real Estate Schools. We offer the course requirements to be eligible to take the state exam, but also varying levels of prep to make sure you're prepared to pass that state test. And that is what this video is designed for, to provide a few practice questions to assist your studies and hopefully give you an idea of what you'll be coming across and what you need to focus more on. So this is part 11 with a few of the questions. Let's dive on into it. 1. When personal property becomes immovable, it A. becomes a lien on the property, B. will cause an encroachment that cannot be remedied by the owner, C. becomes real property, D. all of the above are true and correct. As always, let's dissect the question, understand what they're asking before figuring out what the best answer is out of the options provided. So they're looking at personal property. Personal property usually, most of the time, is movable. That's one of the key differences between personal and real property. When it's movable, we normally classify it as personal property. When you cannot move it, so it's immovable, we classify it as real property. So personal property, for instance, could be your pen, your phone, anything that's usually movable, very trivial items when in regards to the state exam. But for instance, let's say there are cabinets. Well, if the cabinets are on the truck being delivered to the home, those are movable. They're being moved into the home, so those are considered personal property. But once you drill it in and actually build it into the property, it becomes immovable, and at that point, it's a fixture and classified as real property. So right now, when we're looking at this, we should be thinking probably on the lines of real property. So looks to be the best answer of C, it becomes real property. But let's make sure A, B, and D are not correct. Well, we're not talking about liens on the property. A lien is an encumbrance based on money, so it's limiting title based on money. That's not what we're doing right here. This personal property, even though it becomes immovable, is not limiting title. So it's not going to be a lien, and it's also not going to be an encroachment. That's just a different type of encumbrance based on use, and that's not what happens here. So the best answer is C, becomes real property, because all of the above are not correct either. 2. Abel purchased a property from Baker, who took back a promissory note secured by a mortgage on the property. The property is encumbered by A, general lien, B, specific lien, C, involuntary lien, D, security agreements. Well, let's go through this question. So Abel is the buyer and he's purchasing a property from Baker, the seller. And to purchase the property, Abel takes back a promissory note, which is the IOU, the evidence of the debt for the loan to purchase the property. But that promissory note really doesn't mean anything if it's not secured by a mortgage or a trust deed. Now, that trust deed or mortgage is the collateral for that debt. On the state exam, they use mortgage and trust deed interchangeably, but the biggest difference in California, do note, with mortgages and trust deeds is the foreclosure proceedings. Those are different in California, so most of the time in California, we use trust deeds, but sometimes if you see mortgage on the state exam, you can kind of interchange it with trust deed, except when it comes to the foreclosure proceedings, as well as the terms. So, mortgagor, mortgagee versus trust deed, where you have the beneficiary, the trustor, the trustee, etc. But on this particular question, you could kind of interchange it. So we know that the mortgage is the collateral for this promissory note. So now that we have this collateral, so this mortgage with the promissory note, how is the property encumbered? What is it encumbered with? Well, we know it's limiting title based on money, so it's going to be a lien. So it'll either be A, B, or C. Security agreement we can discard from one of the options because the security agreement deals with the a loan, but for personal property, not real property. Real property, we use mortgages or trust deeds, whereas when it comes to personal property, you would use a security agreement. So that would be incorrect on this question. Now, what type of lien? So we know liens can be classified as general or specific, involuntary or voluntary. Well, so we would tell you for a trust deed, it is a voluntary lien. So it wouldn't be involuntary. So we can cross out C. So C and D are not correct. A trust deed or a mortgage is something you voluntarily, as a borrower, as a buyer, take on to purchase the property or refinance it, etc. You could use cash, but if you don't have cash, then yeah, you might be stuck using a loan, but this is one that you are voluntarily accepting to limit your title. So it would be voluntary. Now, is it general or specific? Now, remember, with trust deeds and mortgages, they go against, and the collateral is that specific property, not all the properties, like your income tax, for instance. It would be then considered a specific lien. So the collateral that this mortgage is that specific property. So it is a specific lien. So remember, mortgage is a specific lien, and it's also a voluntary lien. So it's a voluntary specific lien. And you can do that interchangeably with trust deed as well for this particular question. 3, a city implements its general plan through A, court action, B, legislative action, C, zoning, D, condemnation action. Well, whenever you're thinking and you hear general or master plan, you should automatically be thinking of zoning. Zoning goes with police power, and it goes with implementing the general plan. So yes, the general plan might say, hey, we want this amount of area of the city to be for industrial, this for residential, this for that. But to actually implement it, they use zoning for those particular parcels of property. They say it's zoned for residential. So maybe R3, R5, R1, whatever it could be zoned for, or industrial. So it could be M1, it could be for, however they zone it. But the general or master plan is implemented with zoning. And that also goes hand in hand with police power. 4, a selling agent is the exclusive agent of the buyer. Therefore, he or she cannot A, present an offer to the seller and the seller's agent with the buyer's permission, B, personally present the offer to the seller, C, reveal anything negative regarding the buyer to the seller, D, represent the seller because he or she is paying the fee. Well, what we're talking about here is the selling agent, so the exclusive agent of the buyer. What can that agent not do? So everything else will be they can do it, but there's one option that they absolutely cannot do under any condition. So let's go through this. A, present an offer to the seller and the seller's agent with the buyer's permission. Well, as an agent for the buyer, yeah, you're going to be presenting an offer to the seller and the seller's agent. That's really one of your biggest things, is to assist and facilitate with that process. So no, that would not be something that she cannot do. It is something that the selling agent could do. So A is incorrect. B, personally present the offer to the seller. Well, you as the exclusive agent to the buyer can present an offer to the seller and bypass the agent that the seller is using with the seller's permission. So that is something that, even though you are an exclusive agent of the buyer, you could do. So B would be incorrect. C, reveal anything negative regarding the buyer to the seller. That is something you cannot do. You have to, remember, you have a fiduciary duty to your client, which is the buyer in this case. So you cannot tell the seller something negative about your buyer. For instance, maybe your buyer is having issues getting a loan, or there are issues with their job, or issues with some other type of thing that would harm your buyer in the seller's eyes. So you do not want to do that because you have your fiduciary duty. If you breach your fiduciary duty, then that opens up a whole other issues. But with the questions asking, what can you not do? So as an exclusive agent to the buyer, you cannot reveal anything negative regarding the buyer to the seller. That looks to be the correct answer, but let's make sure about D. Represent the seller because he or she is paying the fee. So you can, even though you're the exclusive agent of the buyer at this point in time, you could become a dual agent and represent the seller. But you would need permission and from both parties, the buyer and the seller, and then you would become a dual agent. So the best answer is C, reveal anything negative regarding the buyer to the seller. 5. The essential elements of value in a property appraisal is A, utility, scarcity, accessibility, desirability. B, utility, scarcity, demand, desirability. Scarcity, demand, accessibility, transferability. D, utility, scarcity, demand, transferability. Well, when we're thinking of the elements of value when it comes from an appraisal perspective, what should you be thinking of? Well, the acronym DUST. And what does DUST stand for? Demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Those are the essential elements of value in property appraisal. So let's go through it. So A, utility, scarcity, accessibility, and desirability. Yeah, those are great for value, but those aren't the essential elements. So A is incorrect. B, utility, scarcity, demand, desirability. No, that would not be the essential elements. C, scarcity, demand, accessibility, transferability. No, accessibility. Of course, that's a great element of value, but it's not an essential element of value. Remember, we're looking for the best answer. So process of elimination at this point looks like D will be, but let's verify that it follows DUST. So we have utility, scarcity, demand, transferability. Yes, those 4 are the essential elements of value when it comes to an appraisal perspective, because we have to look at demand, utility, scarcity, transferability. Do people want it? Can it be used? What's the supply like? Is there a lot of supply? And can you actually sell it? So, or actually transfer it to someone else. So those are the essential elements. So the best answer is D, utility, scarcity, demand, transferability. Remember, DUST. So this is it for the video. I hope it was helpful and helped further your studies along. If you have any questions or you want to check out other practice questions that we do have a program of over 3,600 practice questions, and they're categorized actually into the 7 areas of the state exam, as well as practice exams to help simulate the exam. So it's a really great tool if you want to further your studies and have a different database of questions. I highly recommend it. We just focus in California for the real estate exam. This is all we do. But like and subscribe so we keep producing new content on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, reach out. But I'm Schyler with Accredited Real Estate Schools. Thanks for watching and good luck with your licensing journey.